Thanks.
Does that help? Oh. Okay, thank you everybody for coming this evening to discuss this important topic. The state board has had a couple meetings to discuss this and debated. So as some of the voter service people have been involved with some discussions. And every year we say, well, we need to get in touch with the membership and find out where they're coming from. And hopefully we can get a consensus on how we all feel about making decisions about this complicated issue. I think there's a lot of things that are going on with it. But anyway, let's get started. What I wanted to do, I don't know, I'm sure we have a lot of veterans with us, but we might have some newer people. So I was going to take time to just kind of go over the whole concept of what is going on with the empty chair part of candidate forums, some of the rules that we need to follow and think about as we make our decisions. So first of all, I was just going to define for everybody what an empty chair is if you don't already know that. It is when only one candidate is in a contested election accepts or does not have it. What is, or accepts or does not, boy, I must have left something out of here. Accepts or does not, I think it replied to an invitation to participate in a debate or forum, or cancels an appearance after agreeing to participate, leaving the forum with only one participant, often called the empty chair. And I'm putting debate forum in there because a lot of this is the national language too, but we'll talk a little bit more as we go along. So it's just when, usually we are required to have at least two of the candidates in a contested race appear. If one doesn't appear for some reason or another, then we often have to cancel that forum. Okay, next slide. The guidelines that we are required to follow come from the Federal Election Commission guidelines, the FEC. IRS has regulations that apply to 501c3 organizations and 501(4) organizations. There's also guidelines that come out of the Federal Communications Committee. And lastly, we have our League of Women Voters nonpartisan policy. I'm just going to give some brief definitions for each one and what that implies for our decision making. Okay, the Federal Elections Commission, the regulations that apply to candidates running for federal office states that if you're offering a federal office candidate an opportunity to speak in the public and or to provide information to the public about a candidate, it is considered a contribution. So if you're just allowing one person to come talk in a candidate form, that is often considered a campaign contribution. And that's why the empty chair policy is important, because we might run into some problems related to that.
That is for federal offices.
Right. We're emphasizing federal because there's some latitude with state and local policies. And when we dig down into those, we will talk to you about what we have found or haven't found. Okay, the IRS regulations. Apply to 501c3. Many of you are 501c3 organizations. The state is, if you're not either a 501c3 or 4, then you are under the state rules. And it applies to all levels of elections and states that any nonprofit may not participate or intervene directly or indirectly with any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate running for office, which means we can't just focus on one party or one candidate without risk of violating 501c3 rules. Beth, if you have anything to add as we're going through here, let me know. FCC regulations talk about, there's some rules and regulations about making sure that you have a full contingent of candidates in order to be broadcasted on television or radio. I will say, for the most part, a lot of us are in person. Many of us are on Zoom. We haven't found anything that applies to Zoom productions of candidate forums, but I will say that I work with the city of Greeley, who puts it on their GTV Educational Channel 8, and we do have to adhere to the rules and regulations regarding the FCC rules. I think we need to go down. Okay. And last but not least is our League of Women Voters nonpartisan policy, remembering that we don't support or oppose candidates or political parties. And that impacts the empty chair part too, because what is the perception? If we only have one person representing a party or a position and not the other, it might be interpreted that we're in favor of that person and we're not giving equal opportunities for both candidates to appear. League of Women Voters policy shall not support or oppose any political party. We said that. All leagues bear the responsibility of safeguarding this nonpartisan policy and the organization's nonpartisan reputation. And I put that in there because it's about the perception of what's happening as we put on these candidate forums and whether or not all the candidates are participating or have been allowed to participate. Next. And then the the National Leagues is no league should host an empty chair debate in connection with a federal office. It does not seem to clarify what we need to do for a forum. So, except for the federal level, it says
Exactly.
we can't host an empty chair, and most of us are impacted when we're hosting congressional district forums, and especially at our state level, we've hosted some forums for people who are running for state office, and we have to strictly adhere to that as well. I don't know how many of you know this, and you may think this empty chair issue has just come up recently, but I know when Cummins was my predecessor, was the League of Women Voters voter service chair. She found herself in the same position, and people are saying, we need some relief because a lot of people aren't showing up or refusing to participate. So the board did adopt an empty chair policy in 2018. And it does allow you, it says if an invited candidate is unable or decides not to appear at a scheduled event, the event will still be held. This is the case if only one candidate appears, except as noted in the FEC or FCC rules. So keep that in your back pocket as we go along. Next. Issues around the empty chair. Lately, we've had people who from some parties who've decided they're not going to participate in it or accept invitations or accept invitations and not show. And therefore, we're stuck in a position where we have to cancel the forum. I know there's a struggle because I've been through it personally of whether or not if I'm in that position where a candidate has canceled or has chosen not to attend, and I'm left with all my candidates from one party, whether or not we should go forward, and whether or not that's jeopardizing our nonpartisanship reputation. I don't know. We don't know for sure, but we feel like there's some inconsistent policies. Different leagues might have different policies, or they might be doing different things when confronted with this situation. So we wanted to make sure and see if we can get everybody on the same page and understanding of how we're going to handle certain situations. And oftentimes, I will say that we have a lot of candidates who are not happy when they have agreed to participate, and we have to cancel the forum at the 11th hour, and they really wish they'd had the opportunity to share with the public. And on the other hand, the public is unhappy because they didn't get to hear from all the candidates. So those are some of the issues I have. I don't know, you can mention some of the ones as we go along that you've been involved with, and I'll do the same. But what brings us here tonight is to try to decide, what into the, I just said this is my empty chair continuum, as are we not ever going to allow an empty chair? Or are there going to be some situations where they do, or we're always going to allow an empty chair? I know those are the two extremes, but sometimes some situations might be able to be manipulated and it might be a workaround. And I can give you some examples where I've been involved with them. But where are we on that continuum? What can we agree to? What are people's feelings about the policies, local, state, and national? And last, I think what I think we're at is those are the choices I just went over, but that kind of leads us into our conversation and discussion of what your comments are. We really want to focus on what the policy might be and where people's feelings are and where they stand about what we can do, because every fall it's a conundrum with all of us, and we don't know. We haven't. There's still a conversation and a debate, but I'll be happy to answer any questions. So will Beth. She's been involved with this all along, and see what your feelings are, what your thoughts are, and recommendations. Anything to add, Beth?
I don't think so. Just reiterating the fact that we have gotten complaints from legislators who have agreed to show up, and then they're very disappointed when their counterpart cancels or doesn't reply, and we cancel the forum. And especially when it's a state office, which doesn't necessarily have the same FEC regulations because they're not federal offices. So I know that the Larimer League has as their policy, it's around timing as to when a candidate cancels, because sometimes legitimate things come up that make a candidate have to cancel. And it's more the sort of vexatious, not replying or canceling at the last minute that we're a lot more worried about than legitimate emergencies.
This is Nancy Ulrich from Denver, and I'm going to opine on quite a bit. Beth, I hear you on state issues. And I think that's kind of a separate situation from some of our other local leagues. Thank you, Barb, for reviewing federal IRS and FCC rules. Of course, the equal time rule went out years ago, years. And Denver's elections for city council and mayor, the candidates don't affiliate with either Republican or Democrat designation. So that leaves us in a little bit of a different place also. And that's what our Denver group has focused on. Denver League and Interneighborhood Cooperation, which is another nonpartisan group, have worked for approximately 20 years and more on candidate forums. And yes, this problem has come up more recently. And what we decided at some point, we have a lot of city council positions where there are only two candidates. And one particular one that became problematic for us was how to handle this empty seat business. What we came up with, and we felt it was fair to both candidates, was that the candidate in person spoke of his or her position in a 2 to 3 minute statement. And then the candidate who was not available could submit a written position, but along those same lines. And that then, to our minds, made the equal time important. Now, I can't speak to other communities because I don't know what happens around the state with localized elections. We worked that workaround, and I spoke to Jerry Cummins about that at the time, and what our group, our Denver Decides group, working with Denver 8, decided was that policy. Denver 8 was also able to allow candidates at one time approximately 2 minutes to introduce themselves to the public. And so each candidate who participated then had this free time to speak to their own thinking, whether or not they showed up for another televised, many times live televised candidate forum. I agree, this is a difficult decision. I think more people from around the state need to be heard from. Maybe some of us in city and county, home rule cities are a bit outliers. I don't know. But again, thank you, Barbara, for reviewing those positions, which frankly, I was totally ignorant of, except for our position, our Denver League position of trying to be fair to all of our city council and even school board candidates, which are what we focus on. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. And I'll also say that the Greeley Weld County League has taken into consideration if a candidate, has perhaps agreed to attend. It once again, this is so situational, but they've agreed to attend, but at last minute they couldn't, or they had a previous commitment and they couldn't make the date. But if they did submit a statement, then we, a lot and gave them the time that they could use to submit to have that statement read. We will consider them as part of the panel.
Thank you.
Mhm. Anyone else?
We used to have well, I haven't been doing voter service lately. I'm in Boulder County League. But the candidate would say, can I send my campaign manager, or can I send somebody to my place? And we used to debate that a lot. It's not quite as fraught an issue. I think we thought that it's sort of a poor substitute for the real the real deal. But if they wanted to do it, okay. But it's related.
Right. And I don't know. I think one of the candidate participation policies, I'll have to check. I have it with me, says that you could not allow a substitute to come in. But the substitute, if they did, they had to read your statement. They can't answer questions or speak on behalf of the candidate.
Okay, that sounds
This
familiar.
is Josephine Porter. I'm with the Boulder League, and I've been the candidate forum coordinator for quite a long time for the Boulder League. And I did it down in Albuquerque for many years. The Boulder League does have a policy. We do not allow substitutions ever. We do allow if someone wishes to submit a opening statement, if they cannot come, the forum. We will read that at the forum, but only a 1 minute or however long the opening statements are. And we also have, as far as we do not allow any empty chair. However, in the circumstance where at the very last minute, say we've got everybody's at the forum and we find out somebody can't come, we leave it up to the voter service chairperson to determine whether or not the forum will proceed. And, so those are for the last minute situations where people are all present. And in that case, it would be conducted in a very neutral manner with making sure that we try real hard not to show any bias or leaning towards any positions that the candidate might be taking. So we just ask the questions, just like there are two people there, but we ask the questions of the one person. That has, in my experience, not really ever happened, but that is in our policy. We do have issues where people want it to, they get upset because somebody the other side is not, the other candidate's not going to appear, and so they don't get an opportunity to appear. But in my experience, the league needs to be neutral and nonpartisan. And if we hold a forum with an empty chair forum, we are basically endorsing that candidate. And I just would be very opposed. And the National League is opposed to having empty chair forums. They've got it in very clearly in all of their directives to us. And that I think that you can have a little wiggle room if it's a last minute thing and you've got a forum planned, you've got people already there, and you find out somebody can't come. But I know people are not going to be happy, but people are never happy about everything that we do. And yes, it doesn't allow us to, if somebody decides not to participate and it's only two people in the running for the office, then yes, we don't get to hold a forum for them. But we could do maybe a meet the candidates situation where, it's a lot less formal. As far as debate versus formal forum, the league is very clear, and the FCC is clear as far as what a debate is defined as, is basically what we do as forums. It's having, I don't have it right in front of me, but it's basically having a situation where you present questions to people and to the candidates, and they respond. So, but the Boulder County League is very clear that we do not allow empty chair forums or debates. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Josephine.
This is Nancy Ulrich again, and I appreciated those those comments from you, Josephine, because I think that's what needs to be clarified with League. We don't have debates, we have forums. And that's what Denver Decides has always done, is asked the question of the same candidate, each candidate, and given a timed response, which is pretty typical also. So maybe that is something that really needs more clarification, that the so-called debate forum might provide in higher level offices. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is it a more common problem now that with federal offices now that since we don't like what's going on in Washington with the Republicans, and the Republicans would maybe punish us, the league, by well, either declining to come, or has it always been that way, that one candidate or another can't come?
I have had some issue. It's interesting. I can't make a generalized statement. At some levels, I've had a certain party not even respond to an invite.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, I'd go to, if I had a state house debate, I've had total cooperation from both parties. So I see Kathleen. I don't know who raised their hand first.
Kathleen.
Okay, good. I'll let you see if you can keep on.
I'm very new to this whole group, and I'm very new to the league. But I'm wondering, what do you send to the candidates whenever you invite them? Do you send them a copy of what the policy is? Do you outline what will happen if one person doesn't show up? or doesn't respond. I'm not familiar with any of that.
I'd say for the most part, yes, we do. We along with the invitation, there's also, they have to sign an agreement that outlines what our policies are. Now, whether or not everybody includes the empty chair policy, I don't know. But the timing, how the format, what their responsibilities are, is always sent separate or sent along with that, and they have to sign it and return it before they can participate in the forum.
Do you
Now that's
warn them of
that's
any
the
they
state.
don't respond, that this may go ahead without them?
No,
No,
Maybe that would be a way to get people to pay more attention.
well, some people
They
just don't.
mostly know, I think.
mhm.
I think it's hard to determine how people will defend themselves, whether they mostly know or don't. If it's in writing, it's harder for them to deny that they know. If it's not in writing, then they can say, well, I never got that. I never saw that. And they can be very upset. The same with people who might accept and then not have an opponent to interact with. It's just a thought.
Okay, thank you.
Joanne?
Yes, I agree with that idea of sending along what the rules are ahead of time. But I was also going to suggest that when the invitation is sent, and this would work whether it's two or more candidates, you ask them to submit a statement of their positions that would be used in the event that at the last minute, and you could set the time frame for what the last minute is, would be read in their place. And then if you don't, say there's just two candidates, and if you don't get a response from one, no matter what you do to try to get them to commit one way or another, that then you can't have a forum, period, or debate, or whatever you want to call it. It just would not exist. But this way, if people accept, but with their acceptance is their basic statement that would be confidential or whatever they want until the point came when someone would have to read it. If, for example, there was an emergency at the last minute, or they were sick, or some such reason, legitimate reason, hopefully, that they didn't show up, that would protect the league if someone at the last minute just cancels and you've got a room full of people, and what are you going to do? Just say, well, go home? Well, this way, if you have their position in hand, you can proceed.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing, Joanne.
No, good suggestion. Thank you.
I want to ask another question too. If one person can't make it because of conflict or travel, have any groups done a Zoom with that person while the other person or panels live?
Not that I know of.
No, I don't know. We've had it, but our candidate forum was on Zoom, but we've had a candidate in the car driving from home from work or something, and they stop at the side of the road and
We
participate.
did one in Jefferson County for the county commissioners one year, where we had one on Zoom and one, I think it was during, I don't know if it was during COVID or just before COVID. But the one the one on Zoom actually won, so it wasn't bad for him.
We haven't really had the capacity to do that.
Well, now we
Right.
might.
Some
Jeff has had his hand up for a little while.
Guys, if our mission is to defend democracy, democracy requires engagement. And our forums are intended to provide that opportunity to have candidates share their opinions and discuss their differences. Um, we had a rebellion by one particular political party in the Gunnison Valley. They're not good losers. And therefore, we were the evil party who manipulated our partisan League of Women's Voters group, had manipulated the election. I understand the FCC and FEC arguments, and I think Barbie laid out a good base for our understanding. But if we relinquish the opportunity to provide these forums, then I feel like we're giving in to the people who want to undermine our ability to provide a democratic process. So this really, my mind says no, don't give up. If you have an empty chair, let's create a policy. But my question is, maybe I missed this. I saw the form that you put up, Beth, about the candidate agreement. But would we be better off to have a state policy? And is that what we're trying to achieve here? Universal policy that would cover all leagues?
That is the goal.
Okay.
But because there's been so much confusion about differing policies amongst leagues.
Mhm.
However, we haven't asked that basic question. And I do see 3 people with their hands up, so you are noticed. But uh, Barb, do you mind me asking the question of, does everyone think it's a good idea to have a statewide policy on this? That we all come to consensus on and agree to follow until it needs tweaking. I'm not hearing strong opposition.
Yes, I
Great,
think so. I think that would help in setting up events
great.
and knowing
Thank
how
you.
to do it.
Okay, let's get to the questions. Sterling first, then Kathleen, then Christina.
Thank you, Beth. Similarly to what Jeff said, I worry, and I've worked in other nonprofits that struggled with the same thing, but it concerns me when I see our rules about if one party doesn't show up, you cancel, and that gets used almost in a manipulative way. That is, it seems like I just am also in favor of creating clear rules, but that if you choose to not come, that's your choice. But we're going to let everybody know that you were invited and you chose not to come. I just think we're living in different times when maybe kind of the old rules worked a little bit better, when folks maybe had a bit more decorum and a little bit more class than what we're seeing now. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Sterling. Kathleen?
My thought, I agree with what Jeff said, also what Sterling just said. My thought is that if you frame it in the context of doing education of the public and really emphasize that and make it clear that if you don't agree to this or you don't appear, then the other party is going to have the floor. That's all there is to it. I don't see how it makes us viable if we let someone manipulate it, like apparently some people have been doing.
Christina?
No, I agree with Sterling, but I went into the last county commissioners forums possibly having to kick a candidate out once they arrived because they refused to resign the agreement. We did not know if we were going to have it signed until they walked in the door, and they were late coming in. Now, we had enough candidates for county commissioners. There was no question we were going to have the debate, but this was an extremist candidate, and they were flatly refusing to sign anything, and they were trying to bring their literature in. And we're going, no can do.
Yeah.
So, that kind of extremism is out there where they'll take that way too.
Thanks, Christina. Peggy?
Yeah. on the idea of going ahead with an empty chair, I think we do have to worry about if we're broadcasting it,
Mhm.
because FCC rules would come into effect there. So, you know, if we decide to go ahead, then maybe we just don't record it and don't have it on public TV or whatever. I was also going to mention that in Boulder County, we had a similar situation to Barb. So in 2010, all of the candidates from one party refused to participate in our state legislature forums. And so a couple of days before the forum was supposed to happen, we had to cancel. And it made the front page of the Daily Camera. And, you know, the people who were going to attend were very upset that they didn't get to participate. But I will say that since then, we've had good participation from both parties because it was so embarrassing to that one party, you know, I mean, so anyway, just thought I'd throw that out. And also, another thing, and that is that often some of our counties are different because we're dealing with city councils, which are nonpartisan elections. We're dealing with county offices, which are partisan elections. And we're dealing with state legislative districts, which of course is state level and also partisan. So we've got 3 different levels that we're dealing with.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yes,
I think
that,
a lot of us are.
yeah. And again, we don't have any choice on federal races. If if there are 2 candidates and one drops out, we are required by federal law to cancel that forum. So really what we're discussing here is state offices and below, which are the ones that really matter. Beth, then Karen, then Joanne.
I'm just going to agree with several of the others who have commented about our responsibility for educating the public. We need to keep in mind that these things are a balancing act of providing opportunity for candidates to present themselves, but also addressing the need and our responsibility to help the public actually know what's going on and who's who. And if we can emphasize to the candidates that that's an important part of this for us, it might help the management of particular situations a little bit better.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, it might, but it also just might stick in their heads that we helped codify abortion in Colorado. And anyway, Karen.
I wonder if posting our forums on YouTube is subject to the same FEC regulations.
Yes,
It is. Okay.
if they're federal offices, yes.
Only if there's federal offices. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But I still want to go back to Joanne's idea because I mean, in the winter time or wherever, you know, last minute things happen. And if the voter service chair has in their hand a written statement from everybody, basically, about their stance or position, then if there will be at least 2, I would say at least 2 other people there, that the forum could possibly go on. If you give them, you know, if you read that statement. I'm not so sure about if there's only one other person. Don't know. So I appreciate the discussion. I like black and white, not gray.
Mhm. And Kathy Marr did put something in the chat about if a candidate can't come on the appointed date, can we offer to play a pre-recorded video
Yeah,
of the answer to each question? And that is definitely another possibility. It sounds like you are figuring, Kathy, that the questions will be supplied to all candidates ahead of time. And that's not always true.
Correct.
Never true
So-
in Denver. Never true in Denver.
We have done it at the state level for federal candidates, basically as a way to get folks of a certain party to attend, to feel like they could trust us and that we're not going to pull any gotchas on them. I agree completely that it's not ideal. But it did work. In fact, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert proudly said, I haven't missed one of your forums. Heck, if she trusts us.
Well, she missed the primary one. She missed the primary
She
one
did.
a couple of them
Yes.
last year. So
It's true. I think she said that to me in 2022.
right.
And then quickly fell off the map as things got more and more divided. Karen, are you done? Did you want to say anything else?
No.
Okay. Joanne?
Actually, it goes back to something Karen said. Mine's more a question. If there are 3 or more candidates and one does not show up, is that still considered an empty chair? I mean, do you have to
No.
have
No.
every
No.
candidate? Or do you
No,
have
for
to
some reason,
just have
empty
at
chair
least 2?
applies.
Yeah,
Yes.
just 2 candidates in the race.
So
If
the
you have
problem
more and
comes
one
when
doesn't
there
show up.
are, if there are only 2 candidates, then that's when the problem arises if one of them doesn't show up. And as Karen and I
Yes.
have both said, if you have a written statement or a Zoom or a video or whatever that you can present from the other person. And I also agree with the point someone else brought up, is to emphasize that this is a public education type of meeting, and that's what is important about it.
Thanks. Kathleen?
Yeah, I just want to, so the FCC rule applies only to federal. Do we have
Yes.
anything that applies to state? Is there anything?
We have not found anything.
No.
So, especially if you emphasize the educational end of it, and a couple of times there were only 2 candidates and one of them didn't show up and the other one didn't even present a statement.
Right.
I think that the way the temperature is among people running for office these days, that they would be pissed. But I also think that they would then show up somehow, either by a statement or in person the next time. Now, obviously, if someone has an emergency come up at the very end, that's something that you can easily explain. And maybe you don't have a statement from them, but you can explain it so that the audience would not take it as you're trying to boost one candidate over the other. They're just recognizing that this was an emergency. These things happen to everybody, and that can't be avoided all the time.
Sure, but if it's a federal office, we still got to cancel.
If it's a
If
federal,
it's not a,
yeah.
if it's not a federal office.
Has there been any move to get that changed?
You can't
Uh,
change, you can't
I don't
change
think
that.
that's ever going to change. No.
You can't change that.
No.
Okay, Maud, then Josephine, then Vida.
Portland, I don't know if they're still doing it, but for a while was videotaping one-on-one with different candidates. So instead of having everybody at the same time, there would be a little video of candidate A answering all the questions and with a league member, and another video of candidate B answering all the questions with a league member asking them, which gets around the I can't make it on Thursday issue, and also takes less time for each candidate.
Does disallow for question, Q&A though.
Yeah, it disallows audience questions, obviously.
But it's better than nothing, for sure. Thanks, Maud. Good to see you. Josephine.
Yes, just quickly, we have had a lot of independent candidates in Boulder County, and that's, so sometimes, well, actually quite often we have 3 candidates running, and the independent candidates really enjoy the opportunity, the libertarians, and the opportunity to participate. So even if one of the candidates doesn't, we've been able to carry on with a lot of our forums, which we have been doing quite a few of by Zoom, because sometimes we have 12, 14, 15, 16 forums in an election year.
Yep.
Just about the written statement, I from somebody who's trying to get candidates to reply just to invitations to participate, I think it's unrealistic that we can expect candidates to take the time to submit a 3-minute written statement. We do provide them with the opportunity, if they cannot make it, that they can provide that a written statement, if they're going to be out of town. Although Zoom, we've had them doing Zooms from Disneyland and all kinds of places. It's really worked out very well for us. But once again, if I just think it's unrealistic. It will be very hard to get them to everyone to submit a written statement. It's just unrealistic.
No, and
Those
I would
are my
agree
thoughts.
with.
I also
Oh,
wonder if the
excuse me.
IRS rules, we talk about the FCC and the FEC rules, but the IRS rules affect 501c4s, 501c3s, and that's what we are. And if they don't allow 501c3, 501c4 to promote a candidate, and if having an empty chair forum or debate, which according to the FEC, a forum and a debate are basically the same thing. I mean, a debate is basically what we're doing. It just doesn't have the give and take and the rebuttals and all of that very complicated stuff that a debate has. But I'm wondering, I just don't know how you get around the IRS.
I think I know that's a serious one. And I remember canceling a forum with Dave Young, and he was really upset. And I said, it's considered a campaign contribution if we just do a forum with you. And we finally got Beth finally got the opposing candidate to step up, so we could reschedule it. But yes, that is I think it's a serious situation. And the other comment I was going to make, we have problems with candidates replying to Vote 411 and answering questions there. So writing, a short statement to reflect their beliefs and things, but I think it would be difficult to ask everybody to do that too. The reality of that.
Vida?
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm part of Arapahoe Douglas County League, and we get this. This is I'm gonna be for real with you. People are saying that the league has become Democratic, so the Republicans do not want to participate in any of our forums. When we are trying to contact these candidates, all of the independents and the libertarians and the Democrats respond. The Republicans do not respond. On the Douglas County side, on the Arapahoe side, they will, but on the Douglas County side, they have just said, no, we're not gonna be messing around with the league, because they say that when we pick our leaders of democracy, like we picked Jason Crow, now we picked Phil Weiser, they say we are not bipartisan. So I wonder if we could change our language and not say it's a forum, say it's a meet and greet. That's more casual, and no one should be offended by that. That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vida. That's interesting. Jeanette.
Yes, I was going to say almost the same thing that Vida just said. When we haven't talked about the meet and greet situations, and maybe we can just spend a few minutes seeing if that would resolve some of the problems we have.
That's certainly a viable alternative. So let's see what a couple other people have to say, and maybe we can talk about that too.
Priest, then Joanne.
It seems to me that last year in District 3, there was a journalist that interviewed the candidates, and then I don't remember who planned that. I think it might have been you guys did, Beth?
Yeah.
So the journalist put it all together, and my recollection of it was that it took too long for that information to get out there, waiting for each individual candidate to get their information together and videotaped. And then by the time we got it all together, we didn't want to put one person on first and then wait for the other person. We wanted all three on at the same time. And it seemed like it came to us kind of late in the game to post on our website. And it was well received and a lot of people watched them, but it kind of raised my anxiety level. And I think there's a point well taken also on the vote 411. You know, there are candidates that won't fill out provide that information. And you're stuck with one person giving the information, and it's kind of difficult sometimes how do you explain that we didn't get cooperation from the other party, and what you see is all you're going to get.
Yeah, that is another thing to discuss is basically how deep do we go on candidate shaming when they don't show up? So, Joanne.
Yeah, just a quick thing about written statements. If any viable candidate doesn't have already written position statements that they're using in their materials and so on and so forth, it's not like they would have to create something from scratch to send in with their response that we're asking them to do. It's not like they have to fill in the blanks of some form. But it just doesn't make sense to me that even with social media and so on, they've got to have some written materials already in existence.
You'd sure think so. But it's not always true for especially minor party candidates. But good point, Joanne. Beth.
Sorry, realized I was muted. That I want your point about candidate shaming, I think is an important one actually, because I think in order to stay nonpartisan, we need to be able to present the circumstance in a non-shaming kind of way. And one of the things in the back of my mind as we've been having these, the continuing discussion was that perhaps we could try to put together a generic statement that would be used in the event that someone either doesn't respond at all or doesn't come other than the emergency situation, and that statement be put out with the invitation to say, if we don't hear from you, we will need to make some statement to the public as because we're trying to educate them and provide them the opportunity to learn, and that this is what would be said. And then they can have a choice of saying, well, oh, that, whatever.
Yeah,
Sure. Or we just get the newspaper to shame them like it worked for Peggy.
You're right. I don't know. We talked about this at the board too. And I think there was a statement in some of our policies, or I don't know, it might even been mine, because it's, how these things are handed down. But where it really said, well, this person never responded to an invitation, or, we never heard back from them, or something like that. So now I just say they were not able to attend. That was it. If it's the case where we have a situation where we have more candidates and the candidate forum, continues on. But we have thought about that, and maybe we could come up with go back and look at that again and give you a general statement that would be appropriate.
Karen, and then let's cut off questions so we can keep this as an hour as we promised.
I totally agree with Joanne. If there's somebody running for office, they've got to have a 30-second to 2-minute elevator speech to convince voters. I don't care if they're going house to house or whatever, why they should vote for him or her. And that should not be very hard. And I think in Chaffey County, we've been doing this for 23 years now. And I think on occasions when somebody really couldn't make it, not just, I can't even remember, it was just 2 people or more, we have let a substitute come in and just read a statement. So there's somebody there. But
okay, great. Well, I think our next steps are that Barb and I will sit down and go through this recording and transcription and try to map out everything that folks have said, various options, and where we still have gaps in, which is a lot of places, including candidate shaming. So we will be in touch with this group, as well as voter services folks who aren't here. Barb, do you want to say anything?
No, I think I've been taking notes, but I do think I haven't been keeping track of the chat either. The only thing is that I do think we need to provide some alternatives to canceling a candidate forum. And somebody mentioned in the chat, maybe be able to switch over to a meet and greet. I don't know if we have any guidelines except those of the ones in local leagues who have had them from the past, to create some guidelines for what is a meet and greet and what is all involved there. What are some alternatives? Is there just having individual candidate interviews that can be posted? I think we've gone to that. I did that with the newspaper one time, where we just and sometimes we did it with the candidates themselves. And that was when we were in partnership with the Greeley Tribune, and they came down and we just asked the questions, and they gave their answers individually on tape, and we posted it. So, what are some of the different ideas that we can brainstorm, or you've done, that might be alternatives, so we don't let that situation stop us from having the candidates educate the public about who they are and what they want to do? So yes, I think we need to do that, Beth. Synthesize the information, put down the proposals, the issues, and keep working on this. But thank you, everybody. You've done it. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, Barb.
Absolutely. So our goal is to have something in place, ideally, that we all agree on, come to consensus on, before candidate forum time. So hopefully get this done by August. Let's see if we can do that. Huh? Yeah.
Beth, does it make any sense to have each league, if they have an empty chair policy, to send that to you?
Yes, Karen Sheik has been gathering them, but if you haven't given one to Karen, or even if you had, send it to probably me, huh?
Right.
Barb?
Yes, that sounds good. No, I think that would be a good idea. We were going to do that, and it hadn't gotten done yet, so that's why we're starting here.
B. Hendricks at LWV Colorado, Hendricks with an X, the cool way. So, thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Really
Thank you all.
appreciate this. it's the beginning of the conversation.
Yes, it
So,
is. Thank you so
perfect.
much. Appreciate
Yeah.
all your hard work, especially in this.
Enjoy. Hey, Maud, will you stay on for a quick sec? Okay, thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.